Man, I just cannot. I cannot with some people, man. And y'all might know who I'm talking about, might not, but I'm gonna damn sure tell you here today on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, y'all? Thank you for joining me for another edition of Locked On Jaguars. I am Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, where it's your team every day, and we love to thank you for making us your first listen. Also, we're free to subscribe to on our YouTube page. Just go to the Locked On Jaguars YouTube page and hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and then hit that bell so that you receive notifications each and every time we drop an episode. And wherever you listen to your podcast while you're riding around or sitting at work, wherever that is, make sure you check it out every single day and check in to make sure you don't miss an episode. Today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedonnfl and use the code, all lowercase, LOCKEDONNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Shout out to the everydayers for joining us every single day, and you can be one too. All you got to do is join us every single day. How about that? All right. Got a lot to go through today. A lot to go through. You heard from the beginning. I said, I just can't with some people, man. Did a poll yesterday. No right or wrong answer. Just wanted to find out what your thinking was. I'm going to explain that poll today in segment 2. We're going to call that buy or sell the numbers. Unreal. And I'll give my explanation for that. First, in the first segment, we're going to talk about youth is no longer an excuse. It's never been one to me, but it wasn't even an hour and a half ago. Doug Pederson just said that before I came on the air, so I'll go with that first. Like I said, buy or sell the numbers in the second segment. And then the third segment, the blame game, run amok. I'm about tired of everybody blaming everything on Press Taylor. Not saying that he's been great, but I don't think he's been the biggest problem of the things that are driving you all crazy. So we'll discuss that as well. All right, but let's get to this youth is no longer an excuse. It hasn't been an excuse for me for a long time. A lot of young teams around the league. And I don't know if folks remember, but I did make a comment, and I said one of the things that folks around here want to see is, can we do what the Bengals did? Right? Bengals had a very, very young team in the Super Bowl, second-year quarterback, second-year wide receiver, first-year rookie wide receiver, making a bunch of noise. Their 3 best players on offense were their 2 receivers and their quarterback, and they were in the Super Bowl in the rookie year and the second year with a bad offensive line of the other 2 guys with a bad offensive line, by the way. We don't want to leave that out. And then with a defense that had a pretty good interior defensive man, a good pass rusher, and some real good secondary players sprinkled in, but with a great coach in Lou Anarumo who was making it happen. So, the copycat nature of the league says, find a team that kind of looks like your team and hope that you can mirror their success. And that's what we thought the Jacksonville Jaguars were on pace to do after they made the playoff run that they made last year. This is all fluid because everything can change in football because of injuries, and the Jaguars have had some of those things, but so have other people, right? But for some reason, sitting at 8-3 a couple of weeks ago, I'm thinking like, okay, they're tracking. I feel it. They're tracking, right? And now, unfortunately, I guess too, I got to tell you that a lot of people believe that from the comments I get in the on YouTube, or from the comments that I get, the commentary or that I get on social media, is that this is a major overreaction by a lot of people, and I really disagree with that. It's an overreaction if you're looking at it in a vacuum, like, right, they're 8-5 in the second year of Doug Pederson's regime. They've been in a bunch of close games. They've only gotten it like taken to the woodshed twice. This is a big overreaction. Well, it depends what you're reacting to. I'm reacting to the hope and the optimism that this team was headed towards a Super Bowl or something close to it. So if losing in 2 straight weeks in games that you were favored in against a team with a backup quarterback who hadn't played in 8 years, and then a team who was on their 4th quarterback, they were being quarterbacked by a guy who was literally sitting on his parents' couch 8 days prior or 12 days prior. Losing those 2 games when you have a chance to get home field advantage, the thing that makes your journey easier if you're trying to get to a certain goal. Yeah, that's not overreacting. That's calling it like it is. Because the kind of team I think the Jaguars aim to be and the ones that the fans thought they were getting as this year started, they don't do that. Mediocre teams don't do what I just mentioned. So yeah, there's been a little bit of excuse making from the whole crowd that wants everything. Man, y'all overreacting, man. And then the first thing people bring up is either youth or they bring up something that has absolutely nothing to do with my independent viewpoint of the way that this team is playing right now. And that is what happened between the decade of 2010 and 2020 in that decade. I don't care about their history. And this ain't personal, but I also don't care about the misery that you suffered through for 15 years. It has nothing to do with today. It has something to do with it, your attitude as far as how you feel, but it doesn't have anything to do with me. It doesn't have anything to do with what I'm looking at on the field. And the bottom line is, if somebody told you your team wasn't good enough to contend, you'd have wanted to fight them 2 weeks ago. And now you see they're not good enough to contend. And it's changed to, well, they're just young. Well, man, I remember going to that stadium not expecting to win. Good for you. Good for you, man. All of that stuff. I have given the faithful 50,000 their props. Enough with the excuse making. Even your coach said it today. I mean, like, come on, man. Y'all want to defend the team, but even the coach said today, there's no use. There's all of those excuses go out the window. We got to be better. We're doing things that you do in the preseason. Now, he's the one ultimately responsible for making sure that they play better. But come on. Folks are telling me I'm being mean and I'm being mean-spirited and all of this stuff about the things that I said on the podcast yesterday and about a poll that I put up that I'm going to give you guys a chance to buy or sell those numbers. And they do it without even listening to the perspective on the podcast. It's one thing to look at a text or a tweet or whatever they want to call it, a message on X, and try to draw a conclusion instead of just listening to a 29-minute podcast where you get your answer. So, yeah, I'm not trying to necessarily drive you to listen to my podcast, but I am using the podcast. I do use those opinions to basically tell you what the podcast is about. And as soon as I post the podcast, you rebuke it in 5 minutes, but it's 29 minutes long, so I know you ain't listening. But these excuses got to go. I guarantee you this. Even though it stings when I say it, if you go over there and ask those players, am I right or you right? They'll say, no, he's right. He's right. I bet the messaging, I bet the things that Doug Pederson said to his team sounds more like what I say than what a lot of people say who want to make excuses for them not winning. I can't expect everyone to remember every show that I did or even listen. Some people may have just joined and started listening to Locked On Podcast, Locked On Jaguars, and that's fine. And I'll try my best to make sure that I keep you updated with everything that I have said leading up to this point, but I'll give it to you in a little bit of a nutshell right now. I said that after last year, the expectation level of this team would change, and it would change in a good way where fans expected something close to excellence. And that's what they're not getting. So that's why I'm angry. I don't want to talk about what happened in 2016. That ain't none of my business. It ain't going to help you 1 minute right now. All right, a little by the numbers. Something that I kind of did do for engagement yesterday, but I'll tell y'all why I did it. And basically, I'm just trying to help you out. That's all I'm trying to do, man, is help you out a little bit and to be able to cope with some of the things that we have going on. I'll tell you about it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, man, listen, check this out. You want to talk about a cool gift? How about Skylight Frames? Let me tell you what it is, man. If you're looking for something meaningful this holiday season that your loved ones will actually use and enjoy, think about a picture frame that's digital, that you can load pictures in using your phone and then have those pictures update and change all the time. Capturing memories. I have a brand new grandson, and I'm telling you, man, he's the apple of my eye. And guess what? We are able to chronicle him growing up, and it is absolutely so fun to do it when you place those pictures in there chronologically. How about a touchscreen photo frame? You can send photos to straight from your phone, and they appear in seconds. Satisfaction guaranteed. Confident that you'll love Skylight. We offer free 120-day returns. Top-rated brand. It's over 1 million happy customers, thousands of 5-star reviews, and available in over 30 countries. Recommended by the Today Show, Forbes, New York Magazine, and more. As a special limited offer for our listeners, get $15 off your purchase of Skylight Frame when you go to skylightframe.com/lockedon. To get $15 off your purchase of Skylight Frame, just go to skylightframe.com/lockedon. That's skylightframe.com/lockedon. All right, man, right here on Locked On Jaguars, segment 2 on Locked On Jaguars. And today is just about kind of clearing the air. I love what Doug Pederson said. He says, no more excuses. Everybody has to grow up. The defense is the one that really has to grow up. We're going to talk about that in segment 2 because we're going to look at some numbers from last year and this year. And we're going to look at the last 2 weeks. And I'm going to show you exactly why I do things the way that I do them, and I feel and think the way that I think. And we'll get to those in just a second. So I did this little poll yesterday, right, on my my X account. And the poll that I did yesterday, I gave multiple options. To those who engaged. And I'll tell you exactly how many people actually engaged. 2,726 people voted. Here was and a lot of people overthought it, but I'll explain it to you. Here is the poll. You can back into the playoffs, meaning like win 2 of the next 4 games, go in at 9-8, because those other teams aren't good enough to catch up to you. So if they go in at 9-8, that means that they would essentially have gone 1-7. Is that 1-5 over the last 6 games? Or if they get in at 10-7, that means that they've gone 2-4 over the last 6 games, which would mean like they're not really this hot team. They're not really playing as well as you think, this, that, and the third, right? But you back in, that means you get 2 straight playoffs in a row. That means you get to look at everything in a vacuum and go, and some people even mentioned this in their response, that it would be 2 straight years of the playoffs, and the Jaguars haven't done that in a long time. And I said yesterday on yesterday's pod that there's value to that. And what I mean that there's value to that is, it's the same thing I always talked about when building a house. You want the foundation, and then you want to start seeing some elevation, right? So this 2 straight years in the playoffs would seemingly be the foundation. Plus, you started to put some framework for your house up, right? And okay, or you could just look at it, hey, the foundation, we had to do 2 years of foundation because we're doing a monolithic slab. That's the slab that sticks up off the ground. Okay, so much for my my house building stuff, but you get my point. So there's value in that. Here's where it gets sneaky. I am inundated with Trent Baalke has failed this franchise tweets or messages, and it doesn't come from everybody. I am inundated with they don't have the dogs on defense, or they got the bad defense coordinator. He's gotta go. I got you. I feel you. Some of that is emotion, some of it is actually practical, and I get why people think that. I also get Press Taylor is the cause for everything. I don't get that, by the way, even though I question some of those play calls too, but I questioned them last year, so there's no difference. And that's the difference between me and a lot of people is I actually questioned that stuff last year, and folks that didn't question it last year are now questioning it, and nothing's changed except for the fact that they actually told you who's going to be doing what, as opposed to last year, they were doing the same thing, but they didn't tell you. One of the reasons I'm sure Doug put that out there is because of what happened to Eric Bieniemy. That everyone always says is Doug Pederson's offense. When Doug Pederson told everyone that Press Taylor called plays down the stretch last year, nobody believed him. Until my man Demetrius Harvey found a video where they pulled it up, and it was during the playoff run last year, and Trevor was sitting there on the bench and said something like, yeah, Press found that, man. I'm glad Press called that, because now then it's like, oh, okay. So that's what I mean that I'm going to touch in segment 3 with the blame game, because I think we start doing that and we don't really match up with exactly what we expect. Speaking of matching up with what you expect, let me get back to this. I get killed with the fire Balky. So I personally know this is my opinion, if they go back to the playoffs, they get to look at it in a vacuum and say, this is 2 straight years. You're not going to fire a guy when he's taking a team to the playoffs 2 straight years. That's just what it is. If you want him fired, the only way that that's going to happen, and firing him would mean that you get a legitimate shot at getting somebody else in here that can actually build this franchise up the way it's supposed to be. Now, granted, they're 3 years into Trevor's rookie contract. They got 2 more years before the extension not before they do the extension, but before this extension actually kicks in. So they got to load this roster up with a bunch of people. Who do you want to do that? You want Trent Baalke to do it, or you want somebody else who may be more in line? And I got a guy in mind, but I won't mention it because it's just, to me, it's a little unethical. But a guy who's more in line with exactly what Doug Pederson wants, what he needs, and understands how to build guys and put guys for this system into place. I'm not absolving Doug Pederson of blame. He is the ultimate one that's going to take the responsibility for it, because it ultimately is his responsibility. And he's never run away from it. He's always said, put it on me. The point that I like to make about this is, if I offer you a scenario, and the scenario in this situation was that you could either back in, or if you don't want to back in, you back in and make it, and get thumped and retain Trent Baalke under the situation I just gave you. That's exactly what's going to happen. Or you can barely miss and they'll change GMs. So a lot of people went, well, I'd rather have them if I knew that they were going to change GMs. I just told you what the poll was. The poll is this. It's either or. It's black or white. It's not all of this. Well, I know he's not going to do this, so it's just my opinion. I didn't ask you for that. I asked you to answer the question the way it was, and I did that for a reason. 72% of the people bought it. They said, we want to back in and retain Trent Baalke. Good for you, because that's exactly what I said I hope happens. And a lot of people thought when I was answering this question that I was being facetious. And I said I wanted that, but then here's the reason. I said because it'll make the fans feel good, even though I don't think that's what's best. Based on the 2 scenarios, I'm not hoping that one of these things happen. I'm just saying, which would you rather have happen? Like, if they happen, in hindsight, when you look back, which one will you say, you know what, I really wanted to make the playoffs, man, but I'm glad they're making a change? Or are you going to sit here and say, yeah, we backed in and we got thumped in the first round of the playoffs, and they're going to still keep Trent Baalke? Best of both worlds is they get into the playoffs and they realize they still need to change Trent Baalke, but that wasn't part of the poll. Here's why I did this way. Because a lot of people beat me up and down my head over and over, and you guys don't get to see it, but I'm just sharing it with you, about something that will never happen if they got their wish. And if they got their wish, we go to the playoffs 2 years in a row. And if that happens, I'm betting every dime I have that Trent Baalke will not get fired. I'm basically asking y'all to make your mind up. What do you want? I know you want everything, but everything ain't going to happen. That's why I did it. It's the same reason I'm going to tell you this now. Stop tagging me in stuff aimed at Tony Khan, telling Tony Khan to fire Trent Baalke, when Tony Khan has gone on radio and told y'all he's not a part of football operations. He contributes to analytics and he runs the AEW. He is not what you think he is. Please stop tagging me and Tony Khan in the same sentence talking about who you're going to fire, because he has repeatedly told you that is not what he does. That's all I'm saying. Stop asking for stuff that you're not willing and not ready to receive it. I'll tell you why this blame game has run amok. Has run absolutely amok. And it's getting on my nerves. But Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for your 24/7 covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. I'm going to tell you what I mean by that the blame game has run amok. I'll do it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. Gotta let y'all know about PrizePicks, man. That's right. It's the daily fantasy sports platform in North America that is the biggest one. There are no others bigger than PrizePicks. And we're the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports, because it's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros, sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Basketball is real cool, man, because they got a feature on basketball where it's points, rebounds, and assists, and they give you a total number. If you like those total stat guys, if you like those guys that fill up the stat sheet, that's where you want to go. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. I'll read it again. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. That's right. It is PrizePicks, man. Make sure you use the promo code LockedOnNFL. And I have to let you know today's show is also sponsored by FanDuel. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers Stay Hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. Also, make sure you visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and kick off the NFL season. I'll say it again for you. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel is an official partner of the NFL. All right, segment 3, running it down here on Locked On Jaguars. Gone over the youth is no excuse. Buy or sell the numbers. Basically, that's my petition for y'all to stop asking me for unrealistic things unless you want something that's going to make you feel uncomfortable. Okay. I personally think that if their record is 9-8 and they miss the playoffs, I personally think if they make a change, that's actually better for the long term of this organization. We just have to get out our feelings about the two things in a row. But to me, if you're asking me which one I want from the seat that I sit in, I want them to make the playoffs 2 years in a row, because I know what that does for Jaguar fans. So this blame game, let me get to the blame game. All right. So the blame game now is still fire Press Taylor. I got a news for the fire Press Taylor group. They scored 27 points this past week, and they lost. And they scored 31 the week before and they got beat. Or 28 the week. No, they scored 31 the week before and they lost in overtime. And if you pay attention to the timeline, everybody wants to fire Mike Caldwell. This team was 8-3 with the offense playing piss poor, and everybody wanted to fire Press Taylor. Now, there are people that want to fire Mike Caldwell and Press Taylor. And it's one of the reasons is because the Ian Rappaport report that Press Taylor was the one calling plays, and it made folks think like, why are we changing what we're doing last year? Maybe they didn't. Maybe they just made an announcement. And that's what I've been trying to tell people this entire time. But there are people that still want me to talk about Press Taylor. If I had a problem with Press Taylor, I'd have had a problem with Press Taylor before the season started. But I didn't. Now we can also talk about Doug Pederson. Because if you really feel like this is all on Press Taylor or this is all on Mike Caldwell, well, there's somebody, and if they don't make a change, you need to point to Doug, because unlike any other change where you're screaming for Tony Khan, who ain't going to do it, where you're screaming for this guy, Doug Pederson can change his staff. But if Doug Pederson changes his coordinators, that means Doug Pederson was wrong about his coordinators, which is why I keep blaming Doug Pederson. That's it. It just doesn't get any more simple than that. Am I going to sit here and say a team that's averaged 29 points over the last 2 weeks that were playing against backup quarterbacks that the offensive coordinator didn't do enough? My problem with the Jaguars is they can't walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. They can't fix their offense and fix their defense at the same time. That's what bothers me. And that's to a bigger issue, a bigger problem. When we constantly sit here and talk about what the players do and what the players don't do, we never talk about what effect it has on the game when they do things when they don't do things that they don't do. Right now, the Jaguars are fourth from the worst in the league at throwing the ball in the middle of the field, according to stats that somebody put out today, that they're fourth. They don't ever attack the middle of the field. There's only 3 teams that do it worse than them. So when folks ask me about Evan Ingram, who's going to bust 100 catches this year, he has 85 catches. He's probably going to get 100, and he might get 1,000 yards. Or he'll get real close to it, right? And I say, well, that's cool that he's catching all those balls, but for me, it'll have a bigger effect if he caught fewer balls than that. But the ones he did catch, he catches in the middle of the field and down the seam. The retort to that is, well, that's offensive design, because that's not where he is when they're throwing him the ball. Right. Here's the other part of it. That's not who he is, even if they did want to throw him the ball. Who he is exactly who he is. So they still don't have a seam guy. They still don't have a middle of the field guy. Where does Travis Kelce catch? And I know that's naming the GOAT, but he ain't the only tight end in the world, but I'm just using him because he's the best, right? So where does he catch the ball most of the time? It is right between the hash marks. And he doesn't do something out of this world. I watched it. He comes off the line, he runs, he just patiently go. He'll stop somewhere, and it's like nobody around him. And I still to this day cannot figure out why, but it's like he knows exactly where to go, where nobody's going to be at. And this quarterback knows he's going there. It ain't like he put a hell of a move and break nobody's ankle. The dude runs off the line, runs to a spot, turns around, bang, ball hits him in the chest. Every time. And by him being where he is in the middle of the field, it helps everything else. Now, Kansas City ain't the greatest example this year because their receivers stink, but still, the point is they actually did win a Super Bowl without Tyreek Hill. So they're struggling to do that now. But the bottom line is you get the point. And the point that I'm making is the blame game has run amok. No one would be saying anything about I didn't hear Press Taylor's name one time when they were 2-7 last year. And I guarantee you, other than announcing it, their structure is the exact same as it was last year. And there's more evidence to point to that than the other thing. So we're going to say blame Mike Caldwell, blame Press Taylor. That's fine. But ultimately, you got to blame Doug. I try to offer a little bit of a mulligan and say, maybe it's not them. Maybe it's the guys they're asking to do these things aren't good enough, and that falls on the GM. And just to settle this once and for all, maybe all of us are right. Maybe it's a combination of it all. But by the thinking of the fans, you can't break this thing up now. Don't tweak nothing to make anything different. We've made the playoffs 2 years in a row. We can't all of a sudden just tear this thing down. This is what I want everybody to start thinking about. Now, all will be good if they win this game. I'll do the crossover with Kevin Ostraker and post that for you tomorrow. If they win this game, everything's good again, right? We'll just have to see. We'll have to see. But just ponder that for a minute. That's why I did that poll yesterday. I just want y'all to kind of see things the way that I see it. Well, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. That's it. I ain't got nothing else for you today, but I want y'all to take care of each other. I'll see you tomorrow here on Locked On Jaguars.